Here's a question that almost nobody thinks to ask. What if aging isn't something that just happens to you, but something your body is being influenced to do every single day, partly by the food on your plate? Not a motivational phrase, a biological reality supported by decades of research. Right now, inside every cell in your body, there are tiny protective caps on the ends of your chromosomes called telomeres, almost like the plastic tips on shoelaces. Every time your cells divide, those caps get a little shorter. When they become too short, the cell either stops functioning properly or begins sending out damaging signals to surrounding tissue. This process is one of the recognized drivers of biological aging. And here's what the research is increasingly showing. Diet is one of several lifestyle factors that influence how quickly this process unfolds. So the question isn't just what foods are healthy, the question is, which foods are actually supported by science as meaningful allies for your long-term health? Today, we're going to answer that. And I'll warn you now, the number one food on this list is something many people over 60 are quietly underestimating. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, a few of your assumptions are going to look very different. Let's start with number 4. And with a molecule that most people have never heard of, even though it may be one of the most important for cardiovascular health as we age. That molecule is nitric oxide. It signals your blood vessels to relax and widen, supporting healthy blood flow and blood pressure regulation. Its production naturally declines with age, and that decline is associated with increased arterial stiffness and elevated cardiovascular risk. Beets are one of the richest known dietary sources of inorganic nitrates. But here's something important that is rarely explained clearly. Dietary nitrates don't convert into nitric oxide in your stomach. The conversion actually happens through bacteria in your mouth. These bacteria reduce nitrate into nitrite, which is then further converted in the body into nitric oxide under the right conditions. This is why using antibacterial mouthwash immediately before eating high nitrate foods significantly reduces the benefit. You're eliminating the bacteria that make the conversion possible. A clinical study from Queen Mary University found that daily beet juice consumption was associated with a meaningful reduction in systolic blood pressure among hypertensive participants, a result that researchers attributed primarily to this nitrate pathway. Now, and this is worth noting, leafy green vegetables like spinach and arugula actually contain higher concentrations of dietary nitrates per gram than beets do. We'll come back to that when we reach number 1. But beets bring something else to the table that those greens don't. Beets contain a unique class of pigments called betalains. Research published in the journal Molecules found that betacyanins, the dominant betalain in red beets, showed inhibitory effects on several cancer cell lines in laboratory conditions. It's important to be clear, laboratory findings don't automatically translate to human outcomes, and more clinical research is needed. But the mechanistic picture is interesting, and beets remain one of the most nutrient-dense root vegetables available. Beets are also high in betaine, folate, fiber, and manganese. Roast them with olive oil and sea salt, and the earthy taste most people remember transforms into something almost sweet. But before we move to number 3, there's a preparation mistake that millions of people make every single day with one of the most powerful foods on this list. It's a mistake that cuts the benefit almost in half. That's coming up next. Number 3. And I want to make a distinction here that changes everything. Most people know broccoli is healthy. What most people don't know is that broccoli sprouts, the young seedlings harvested just a few days after germination, can contain significantly higher concentrations of broccoli's most studied compound than the mature vegetable. That compound is sulforaphane. Sulforaphane is produced when an enzyme called myrosinase, present in broccoli tissue, reacts with a precursor compound called glucoraphanin. This reaction happens when the plant cells are disrupted by chewing, chopping, or crushing. The result is sulforaphane, and the research around it is genuinely compelling. One of sulforaphane's most studied properties is its ability to activate liver enzymes. involved in the detoxification of certain harmful compounds. To be precise, sulforaphane stimulates what are called phase 2 detoxification enzymes, including enzymes like glutathione S-transferase, which help neutralize and prepare potentially harmful substances for elimination from the body. This is not a dramatic, sweeping claim. It's a specific, well-documented biochemical mechanism. Research published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences also found that sulforaphane appeared to reduce cancer stem cell populations in laboratory breast cancer models. Again, laboratory findings and clinical translation requires more research. But the mechanistic rationale is solid, and sulforaphane remains one of the most actively studied plant compounds. Here's the practical thing to remember. High heat destroys myrosinase, which means heavily cooked broccoli produces far less sulforaphane. Eat some broccoli raw or lightly steam it, and then add a small amount of mustard seed powder. Mustard contains its own myrosinase that can partially compensate for the heat-damaged enzyme in cooked broccoli, improving sulforaphane yield. Broccoli sprouts, eaten raw on salads or blended into smoothies, are arguably the most efficient delivery vehicle for this compound available at a grocery store. Now, what if the next food on this list has a preparation window of exactly 10 minutes, and if you miss it, you've already lost most of the benefit? That's coming up right after this. Before we continue, if you're watching on Golden Glow Senior and you haven't subscribed yet, I'd like to ask you to do that now. This channel exists for one reason: to bring you research-grounded health information that is genuinely relevant to life after 50. Information that is accurate, nuanced, and actually useful. Not trends, not products, just science, translated into something you can apply. Subscribe and hit the bell. And then let's keep going, because we haven't reached the most important part of this video yet. Number 2. And here, preparation is everything. Garlic contains a compound called allicin, one of the most studied sulfur compounds in nutritional research. It has been associated with reduced cardiovascular risk, antimicrobial properties, and in laboratory studies, triggering cell death in certain cancer lines. But allicin doesn't exist inside an intact garlic clove. It's created by a reaction between a compound called alliin and an enzyme called alliinase, a reaction that only begins when the clove is crushed, chopped, or damaged, exposing those two components to each other. And here's what matters practically. That reaction requires time. About 10 minutes at room temperature for meaningful allicin formation. If you crush garlic and immediately throw it into a hot pan, the heat deactivates alliinase before the conversion is complete. You get far less allicin than if you had simply waited 10 minutes first. Crush your garlic, set it aside, come back to it in 10 minutes. That single habit changes the nutritional value of an ingredient most people use every single day. A large meta-analysis examined over 24 studies and found that higher garlic consumption was associated with a meaningfully reduced risk of colorectal cancer compared to lower consumption. Associations from observational studies are not proof of causation. Other lifestyle factors are always involved, but the consistency across studies is notable. Garlic's derivative compounds, including aguine and diallyl sulfide, have also been shown to interfere with cell replication. And for older adults specifically, garlic's association with reduced arterial stiffness and improved circulation adds a cardiovascular dimension that is directly relevant to the aging process. Now, we've saved the most complete picture for last, and the number 1 food on this list does something that connects every mechanism we've discussed today into a single unified strategy. But first, let me tell you why the way it's often framed in popular health content is actually too simple, and why the real story is more interesting. You've probably heard that chronic inflammation is the root cause of all disease. That phrase gets repeated constantly, but it's worth being more precise, because the reality is both more nuanced and more actionable. Chronic low-grade inflammation is a significant contributing factor. in the development and progression of many age-related diseases, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, certain cancers, and neurodegenerative conditions. But it is rarely the single root cause. It is more accurately described as a shared pathway, a biological environment that makes it easier for these conditions to develop. Some cancers are strongly influenced by lifestyle factors like diet. Others are driven by genetics. This distinction matters because it shapes realistic expectations about what food can and cannot do. What food can do, meaningfully, is reduce the burden of chronic inflammation and support natural repair systems. That's the honest version. And that's what makes our number one food genuinely worth your attention. The number one food on this list is spinach. And I want to start with the nitrate story. Spinach is one of the clearest examples of this. Per gram, spinach contains more dietary nitrates than beets, delivering the same nitric oxide pathway benefits. But spinach's profile goes far beyond nitrates. Spinach contains two glycolipid compounds, MGDG and SQDG, which researchers found to inhibit an enzyme called DNA polymerase alpha in laboratory studies. This is the enzyme cancer cells use to copy their DNA during cell division. In laboratory conditions, these compounds interrupted that process. This is early-stage mechanistic research, and clinical implications require more study. Now, about folate. Spinach is one of the richest dietary sources of folate, but the relationship between folate and cancer is not simply more is better. Excess folate supplementation has been associated with promoting abnormal growth. This is why research emphasizes adequate dietary folate from whole food sources like spinach, rather than high-dose supplementation. The body's needs are specific, and balance matters. Spinach also contains camphorol. It is rich in lutein and zeaxanthin, carotenoids that support eye health, an increasingly relevant concern after 60, and its combination of magnesium, potassium, and vitamin K makes it genuinely multifunctional. On preparation, cooking spinach increases bioavailability of beta-carotene and iron, while raw spinach better preserves heat-sensitive folate. The takeaway is to eat it both ways, raw in smoothies or lightly sautéed. No single vegetable covers more ground, more accurately, than spinach. Let's step back for a moment and look at what connects these four foods. Beets for cardiovascular function and unique antioxidants. Broccoli sprouts for sulforaphane. Garlic for cardiovascular and potential anti-cancer properties. Spinach for the most comprehensive nutritional profile. None of these are miracle cures. They are meaningful contributors to long-term health. One honest final word. The evidence supporting these foods is real, but diet is one tool among several. Physical activity, sleep, and managing weight are all part of the same picture. Give your body the most supported nutritional environment possible. Your body has a remarkable capacity to maintain itself when you consistently give it what it needs. I'll see you in the next video.